what we've been working on, and it's been several years that we've been working on this, is developing and using artificial intelligence tools to be able to provide a service to the industry to allow veterinarians and producers to predict with emerging strains how the vaccines would provide immune coverage to these emerging strains. So it takes a lot of data to do that, and that's why it takes several years to gather that information, not just on emerging strains or wild type strains that have been out there, but on information regarding the vaccines available, the commercial vaccines, as well as the hosts. And I think that's an important part of what we're looking at.
Welcome to the Swine Health Blackbelt Podcast, the latest swine health research digested for you. My name's Dr. Clayton Johnson. I'm the host of the podcast, and joining us in our studios this week for our podcast is Dr. Jessica Risser. Dr. Risser is a veterinarian on the swine technical team with Elanco Animal Health and a veteran of the podcast. So thank you so much, Jessica, for coming back on the show. If you would, Jessica, I know lots of folks know you in the industry, but just in case there's somebody out there that's not familiar with you, would you give just a little introduction and background on yourself?
Sure, Clayton. Thanks for having me again. As Clayton said, I am on the technical team, the swine technical team with Elanco Animal Health, and I've been with the Elanco for 6 years now. That was after 10 years in production, leading animal health and welfare for a production company here in the U.S. And prior to that, I was at NC State. So career life has not been at too many places, but it's been a while out in the industry. And I enjoy getting around to seeing producers and veterinarians out in the field now outside of just one system and working to improve swine health across the industry.
Well, and I am sure in your journey in veterinary medicine, much like with mine, Jessica, there's been a common friend or foe that's joined you along every step from North Carolina State to production to now in your career as a technical veterinarian with Elanco. It's PRRS, right? PRRS is a huge challenge for the pig industry and one that always makes us nervous, always new emerging variants that are out there and lots of ambiguity for producers on what that means for them. You guys have been working on a tool to try and help producers make more informed decisions on PRRS vaccination, and specifically using AI to try and help with that decision-making process. Do you want to talk a little bit, Jessica, about how all that works, right? Like what AI can do to help us better predict PRRS vaccine coverage?
Yeah, I've probably had a long list of friends and foes that have followed me throughout the career, but PRRS is definitely on the list. And as you mentioned, PRRS has been on the list of many of our colleagues before I even joined the industry. And it evolves. It's learning to evolve to our techniques and our management practices and biosecurity along the way. And so what we've been working on, and it's been several years that we've been working on this, is developing and using artificial intelligence tools to be able to provide a service to the industry to allow veterinarians and producers to predict with emerging strains how the vaccines would provide immune coverage to these emerging strains. So it takes a lot of data to do that, and that's why it takes several years to gather that information, not just on emerging strains or wild type strains that have been out there, but on information regarding the vaccines available, the commercial vaccines, as well as the hosts. And I think that's an important part of what we're looking at. I think we've learned a lot from other viruses, not just in swine medicine, but in other species, especially humans, that the host can respond differently to the same virus. Two different people or two different pigs can respond differently. So incorporating that data into the model is really important. So there's, the current way of evaluating vaccines to emerging strains is typically through challenge studies where they have to isolate that emerging strain and vaccinate pigs to the commercially available pigs and then challenge those pigs, and that can take some time. And so what we're trying to build as a tool is something that could tell us within days or hours of having a whole genome sequence how well that the commercially available vaccines, modified live virus vaccines, are going to respond to that emerging strain.
There's a lot of data that's going to have to go into that. Let's start with just kind of the diagnostic information. Would you anticipate that a producer would need the whole genome sequence of the wild type strain of concern, or can we do it with OR5 alone?
So really what we're doing with this model, and what we really encourage veterinarians and producers to start thinking about, because as an industry, we've been trickling into this whole genome sequence idea, right, with PRRS virus. And I think there's a lot of practices out there starting to collect sequences to build that database. And so what do we do with that information? And so that's what this tool is really trying to use, that whole genome sequence, and look at what does it really mean? Because OR5 is what we've typically been isolating or sequencing in the past. That's only 600 base pairs out of 15,000 in this virus. And so we really want to look at the whole genome to know, to give us more information on that. And I mean, this all we had to start with a challenge study where we took naive pigs and vaccinated them, and then challenged them to 4 different challenge strains to really start building the data that we need. And we've incorporated other challenge studies and whole genome sequence strains into that information along the way.
And I may ask a question that's too technical that I can't even understand the answer to, but is it machine learning that gets you to the knowledge part of it? I mean, basically, did you do these controlled trials with known challenge types, and then you just basically tell the computer, here's the results, this vaccine, this virus, these results, and do that with enough different combinations of vaccine and wild type to let the computer start to pick out associations with the outcome?
So it takes a lot of smart people, smarter than both you and I think, to work on this. And I'm the one that's just integrating it for application, right? So we've partnered with a lot of smart people in immunology, computer science, the modeling side, and the data side running these trials. But it's all of that. It's taking the science that's been published and the information out there. It's taking these challenge controlled studies. And then even into the future, we need to keep adding data to it to keep refining the model, right, the algorithm. So whole genome sequences into the future, and outcome data will be important to continue to add to it. I don't think any artificial intelligence and computer modeling system is perfected. Can always and continuously learn from the information that we put into it.
Absolutely. And, one sequence is step one, but I presume with time down the road, we could even look at co-infections as long as there's inputs into the model in the future that say, okay, how does this vaccine perform against multiple wild type strain challenges? Probably not immediately, but at some point down the road, you could even enter in multiple challenge strains, knowing that that's the reality of what we face in the field sometimes, is pigs aren't just dealing with one specific strain, they have a couple of them they're dealing with.
That's a great idea that I'll have to make note of to make sure those smarter than me are incorporating that into the system clean.
Yeah, we can always have a wish list, right? It's Christmas time, so we should be thinking about what's on our wish list.
Yes, we can.
You talked a little bit about the advantages that this will offer, presumably lower cost than doing a challenge trial for every single new strain that pops up. Certainly faster, right? We can ask the computer to run through the algorithm and the model and give us a result faster than we can get pigs and challenge them and that sort of stuff. Ultimately, like long term, how do you see us validating that model? So we'll use this to do some predictions. We'll make some decisions. Then we'll get some more data. Can we plug that data back into the model to validate that the projections it's giving us are close, and hopefully even improve the projections going forward?
Yeah, so that is, like I mentioned, we need to continually add information to it. So I guess that's one of my challenges to the industry, is to start building that whole genome sequence, if you haven't already, database out there, and tying that to clinical outcomes. This also pulls in information, like I said, about the host response. So not just the clinical outcomes, but on a T cell level response. So looking really at the immune system of the host and how it responds to certain proteins that are made by the virus. So we need to continually add information in there to be able to continue to make sure that prediction is correct and is moving along in the process. So we do expect it to take a much shorter time than current methods of challenge studies that can take up to a year. Like I said, to do those challenge studies. And this, once we have that genome and this is perfected, we're hoping days or hours at max. And then ultimately, this tool, what we're hoping, can provide producers and veterinarians with the level of preparation, right, for emerging strains. Okay, so we have tools out there that are telling us and tracking us strains now. I think there's been others featured on this podcast talking about that. So as those emerging strains come about, veterinarians can go on and say, okay, well, what is my best vaccine that's available to me that's going to match up on an immune system level and provide that protection? And then over time into the future, this is not anytime soon, but as we continue to validate and look at what proteins, what areas of the virus are important to the immune system and the clinical outcomes, we can start developing and giving information back to the industry on future vaccination platforms or vaccine types that we can use to address this PRRS challenge.
Jessica, do you foresee this as a tool that your team will use when we have a new emerging virus? So say like, the next lineage 1C5, that sort of thing, a new virus of concern. You guys will do this work kind of behind the scenes and then publish it for the industry to see. Or do you see it as a more routine tool, as in, okay, producer gets a new strain, they got it on their diagnostics, they can either enter it into a website or they can send it to their Elanco tech services person and have them do the analysis. So I guess, do you see it as a one-off just for the new emerging strains that get famous, or do you see it as a more routine tool for every strain a producer's encountering?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's a lot of dreaming that we've been doing in discussions here at Elanco of what level of availability that we can make the tool to the industry. And ideally, we would love to have this opened up to veterinarians in the field that when they have a question around a strain in their farms, in their customer base, that they can go on and put them into the database and the modeling tool and get a result that then they can apply in the field. I think that's the ideal way to make it a solution to the industry that's data-driven and innovative that can be applied right away. And it doesn't have to be some big famous emerging strain or have constraints of availability, that it's there for the industry.
Where are you guys at with the progression of building this thing out? Is it still in the work still to be done category, or do you feel like you've got an initial model that's decent enough it can start to be used right now?
So I would say we're in between those two. So we've done a lot of the initial work. We have some initial modeling, but we still need to add some information to it and kind of do some of that verification process to make sure the information that we are going to be sending out to the industry is reliable. And so that's still in the works, but we are partnering with a lot of different folks in the industry that's been working in this space and are excited about what can come in the near future.
Wisenetics turns podcast airtime into brand authority. We don't sell ads, we elevate voices. Curious how far your voice can go to become a reference in the industry and attract more leads? Scan the QR code and discover how we can turn your expertise into unmatched brand authority. Let's transform expertise into influence, starting now.
Well, I'm very excited with how you're applying this sort of technology to try and answer practical and needed questions in our industry. I think as an industry, we don't know a lot about AI and what it can do for us. I think everybody has some concern that AI could replace, certain job functions and maybe even something that you do, right? And I shouldn't say I'm talking about myself here, right? But I think you're setting a great example for the industry, Jessica, with you and your team saying, all right, AI is a tool. And if we are one of those groups of folks that puts the tool in our toolbox and we can effectively use it to improve the quality of services and products we bring to the market, man, you're not gonna have to worry about your job getting replaced at all. If you're using the AI to drive innovation in your business, you are going to be the businesses that are propelling the industry in the future. So I give you guys a lot of credit for diving into this area and trying to use it in a very practical way to answer meaningful questions for the industry. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing it with the audience, and thank you so much for the investment in the tool.
Thank you, Clayton. It's a way that Elanco's applying innovation and bringing data-driven solutions to the industry. And I hope that AI is not necessarily replacing me, but helping me work smarter, not harder, right? That's the saying out there. And just using the available tools to us to bring solutions to the industry.
Very well said, Jessica. And to our audience, I would urge you to listen closely to Jessica's words. Use AI to work smarter and not harder, right? Think about how tools like this can help you and apply to your business. If you're not dealing with a PRRS challenge right now, think about pushing this podcast to somebody who is. It is PRRS season in the United States, and I'm sure you know somebody out there who could use this information, if nothing else, as a glimmer of hope for all the effort that are being put in to try and improve our PRRS management opportunities. If you have not checked out our website, please go to swinehealthblackbelt.com and do so. You'll find this episode with Dr. Jessica, as well as all the other episodes that we've done there. And we really thank you for being a part of this podcast. For Dr. Jessica Risser, I'm Dr. Clayton Johnson. It's been our pleasure to spend some time with you, and we hope we have a great rest of your day.